King Abiodun and his wife Chinara had 6 daughters and no male child. "Who am I going to leave the kingship to?" pondered the king. For the last 4 generations of every king before him, 6 girls were born to previous kings. Luckily, the 7th child in each generation would always be a boy. King Abiodun's wife was pregnant. Was she going to have a boy, as previous generations had done? One fateful Sunday morning, Chinara announced to her husband she was with child. The king was excited. Now what he had been waiting for was to come to pass. The 7th child, obvious it will be a boy. 9 months later, another baby girl come into the world. The king was mad. "You brought shame into my family," he screamed at Chinara. The king found himself grappling with the magnitude of shame, threatening to cast a shadow upon the kingdom. Although he loved his wife wholeheartedly, regret lingered in his heart, lamenting the absence of an alternative heir he would have gladly passed the mantle of kingship to. The king had to do something for duty. He started flirting with other girls. He would come home and demanding to be intimate with his wife at will. As time passed on, he discovered Chinara was pregnant again. Overjoyed, she rushed to share the news with the king. On the other hand, the king's girlfriend got pregnant too. To avoid shame in the village, the king was not so kind to her when she told him, "What? Pregnant? No, that can't be right. What do you mean? You can't find your period. Search wherever you may have misplaced it. I can't be held responsible for that." "Oh," exclaimed the king in a deep voice. "You were the one who took my innocence." "Oh, stop it. Are you the first person to experience that? Were you planning to keep that innocence forever?" Amara, the king's girlfriend voice, trembled, tears coming down from her face. "What I'm trying to say is that you promised me marriage. I was scared of getting pregnant, but you assured me not to worry, that you would marry me if it happened. I thought this was supposed to be a good news, the beginning of a new chapter for us. Look to. That kid better not be a boy. You know the scandal it will bring to my palace. He can't be my heir." The king rumbled, or whatever you call yourself. "You can't just woke up one morning and expect me to accept a pregnancy. I never knew you were one of those desperate maidens who would do anything to become the king's wife. Go hide yourself. I don't want to see you ever again." The king's voice was firm as he turned to leave. Amara watched him as he lives, unable to believe this was the man who claimed to love her. What would she do now? 9 months later, she bore a son, and the king got to hear about it, but he did not have the courage to tell his wife. King Abiodun had ascended to the throne following the passing of his beloved father. He still lacked a son to succeed him, a worry that glared at him every time. This drove him to take more wives in the hope of having a male heir. Blessed with both looks and wealth, King Abiodun found no shortage of prospective women. Yet despite marrying 3 additional wives, only daughters graced his household. King Abiodun now had a few more daughters and yet no son to carry on his legacy. We must seek the guidance of the gods. The situation feels beyond us this time. Are the women in this palace, Kazazid the king and his aides said. The king had forgotten about Amara and her boy child. It is always said, "Don't leave your blood crying out there. It will give you a bad omen." Determine if the king's wives were truly cursed. After communing with the gods, revealed that king himself was the cause of his predicament. The gods bestowed upon you an heir long ago, but you rejected this blessing. You denied the one who was meant to be. You did not just send a son away, but your rightful successor. The words were cutting through the tense atmosphere like a sharp blade. The gods choose him from the moment of his conception, yet you cast him aside along with his mother out of the pain you inflicted on her. You, by rejecting your own son, you shall never be blessed with a male heir in your lineage, no successor to carry on your name. Your quest for a son shall be in vain. The king relented. I must send people to look for my son. So in the end, the king sent his aides to look for Amara and her son. I was sent on a mission by my king, and not to return until I have completed my task, said the aide. He explained, my king is in search of his son, and the mother who was said to have sought refuge in the forest camp. The aide asked Amara, why would you live in such a place with the king's son? Amara narrated to them how the king had rejected her pregnancy, and out of shame she had fled into the forest camp. Still the king seeks a male child to succeed him and bear his name, as none of his wives could bear him a male child.
I'm sorry for neglecting you. Forgive me. The king cried like a baby. He never thought his past actions would catch up with him someday. He pleaded with his son and Amara. The king urged them to come home and take his rightful place. Fate and time would have still brought us together, my son. I'm sorry you had to suffer because of me. My past life led to this, but I promise I'm a changed person now. You are not looking at the same man. I will be the best father you can imagine. The people need you now, please, my son. Please come home with us. Everyone gathered at the king's palace, for the king had found his son, and he desired the villagers to celebrate his homecoming. It was a wondrous celebration, as everyone wined and dined. The food and drinks were more than enough. Later in that year, the king's first wife's number 10 child was a boy. The long-awaited heir by his first wife had arrived. The king learned that actions have consequences. Sometimes it's important to wait and also realize it is important to take responsibility for our actions and be mindful of how they might impact others. It is never too late to make amends and seek forgiveness. But it is also important to understand that some actions cannot be undone, so it is crucial that we think before we act, considering the potential consequences.